Hello, fellow MechWarriors, Mage Leader here. Well, it's finally here. After months and months of cold indifference, MechWarrior 5 Clans has come at last. It's a release that has left many people excited, and a few others dazed and confused. It's understandable, after half a dozen DLC packs for MechWarrior 5 Mercenaries, having a standalone game that still calls itself MechWarrior 5 was considered by many to be something of an odd move, but I'm going to cut through as much of that as possible today and cut down to the core of the issue. Is the game any good? Is it just a rehash of Mercenaries? Well, let's not waste any more time and just jump right into my first proper video game review. Ladies and gentlemen, okay, let's be honest here, mostly gentlemen, I give you MechWarrior 5 Clans. The clan invasion has just begun. Smoke Jaguar sharpens its claws and prepares to pounce upon the unsuspecting inner sphere. In this game, you play as generic male model number 17 as he leads his dysfunctional band of misfits through the early days of the invasion in an epic campaign that will take you from the periphery all the way to the Curitan Royal Palace on Luthien. Joining you is a crew of colorful characters such as I use contractions and it's not a phase dad, Liam, Ezra the Goody-Goody, the Plank of Wood, formerly known as Mia, and everyone's favorite Sumerian copper merchant, Inasir.
Iltam Zumra Rashupti Ilatim.
Together, you'll face down the inner sphere and bring down the wrath of Smoke Jaguar upon their filthy, savage ways, establishing yourselves as the rightful heirs of Kerensky's grand vision. At first blush, everything seems to be in order. Smoke Jaguar has been underutilized in prior titles, so the chance to play as them could be pretty excited. So how did it all turn out? Well, it's complicated. Piranha backed themselves into a bit of a corner when they chose Smoke Jaguar to be the player's clan. They have a bit of a reputation. You see, the clans are not a singular cohesive unit. Each one has a distinct culture. Clan Wolf builds its identity around being an exemplar of the founder's vision, no matter the cost. Ghost Bear builds its identity around being reasoned and fair in all things, so far as they are able. Smoke Jaguar built its identity around murder. Yeah, there's no two ways about it, the Smoke Jaguars are just straight up pricks. You know your clan is on some shit when Jade Falcon is telling you to chill the fuck out. They are notorious for cruelty, ruling with an iron fist and treating all outsiders as subhuman trash, a resource to be expended however they see fit. Now, I love a bad guy campaign as much as the next guy, and Smoke Jaguar provides a chance to really let loose and show the darker, grittier side of Battletech, so I was hopeful. Unfortunately, Piranha took a different approach. While playing through this game, I couldn't escape the feeling that Piranha desperately wanted me to like the protagonists, and it's a chronic condition that colors the vast majority of the game's story. I understand the reasoning behind this, but I think that it's misguided, especially given the damage it does. For starters, our main cast is painfully unclan-like. Forget, if you can, that one of your Sibkin is constantly spewing a never-ending line of contractions. None of these guys behave like Smoke Jaguars. The dialogue between the main cast is poorly realized and woefully lacking in the over-the-top machismo that typifies clan speak. They come across more like Zoomers on Reddit than clan MechWarriors, quipping and snarking back and forth at each other with informal and unprofessional verbiage that should have been beaten out of them in their early years. Piranha presents these characters to us as wet-behind-the-ears teenagers and not the indoctrinated tube-grown monstrosities that the books and prior games have provided. These guys have been slapped around since infancy, genetically engineered for the sole purpose of combat. From the moment they could walk, they've been subjected to intensive training and a draconian lifestyle designed to crush their spirits and rebuild them in the image of the clan. They've survived a selection process that outright kills the majority of its aspirants, all before the opening cutscene even plays. These aren't kids on their first day of boot camp, these are mind-fucked fanatic child soldiers. And yet they talk as if they grew up playing Minecraft in eastern Montana. The in-game chatter got so insufferable at points that I occasionally went into the options menu and turned the volume all the way down. It's not like I was missing stellar voice performances anyway. The issue extends beyond the main cast and into the larger plot itself, but I can't say any more without going into spoilers, so if that's not your jam, then I recommend skipping ahead to part 2. Before you do, though, I will say that the game's ending does address the problem somewhat, and as a result, it doesn't end up ruining the game. Take that as you will. For everyone else, buckle up because I'm about to spoil some plot points. The game does, in fact, have a series of missions set on Turtle Bay. For the uninitiated, Turtle Bay was the site of one of the most infamous events in Battletech canon, the bombardment of Edo. Tex covered this event in splendid detail in his recent video on the clan invasion, so I'll direct you there if you want to know more. In simplified terms, local Yakuza on Turtle Bay sprang Hohiro Kurita out of Smoke Jaguar imprisonment and escaped the planet. In a fit of rage, Smoke Jaguar committed a brutal reprisal upon the population of Edo. They bombarded the city from orbit, mindlessly slaughtering men, women, and children alike in a display of wanton destruction. The act horrified the other clans, and Clan Wolf immediately responded by bidding away their warships for the rest of the invasion, effectively forcing all the other clans to follow suit. It sounds like a terrible thing, but honestly, it's pretty typical Smoke Jaguar behavior. Now, this section is a small blurb in the official sourcebooks, so there's room for artistic license here. So how does Piranha choose to handle it? Well, by making Smoke Jaguar out to be a conflicted house. Perez does indeed give the order, as the text describes, but the game would have you believe that he acted completely alone, with everyone else looking on in slack-jawed horror. Then immediately afterward, we're treated to a lecture from Discount Deborah Wilson about it.
The time of our founding, strength and power have been hallmarks of the Smoke Jaguar clan. But this is not strength. This is weakness!
What?
Already, the feckless wardens of Clan Wolf have pledged to remove naval assets from all future bidding. And because of Beta Galaxy's disgraceful actions here, the Jaguar will have no choice but to follow suit. Cordera Perez might have ordered this bombardment, but the fact remains, none of you stood to challenge such a blatant violation of our ways.
You serious?
I'm sorry, a blatant violation of your ways? Sweetheart, have you ever looked back at what your clan has done in the past? Because Edo isn't your first rodeo. Hell, your clan's first Khan, Franklin Osis, did something virtually identical during Operation Klondike. When the citizens of Kaliningrad got tired of Smoke Jaguars raping and murdering them, and no, that isn't hyperbole, they began to riot. Osis responded by pulling all his troops out and bombarding the city until it was flat. And then, for the rest of the campaign, the clan would announce itself as Clan Smoke Jaguar Destroyers of Kaliningrad. They not only leveled an entire city, they bragged about it afterward.
For you, the day bison graced your village was the most important day of your life. But for me, it was Tuesday.
So no, when Piranha tries to throw Perez under the bus here, I'm not buying it. While it's true that Dieter Osis did successfully betchall his way into Cordera Perez's position afterward, the wording of the sourcebook leads me to believe that this was due to Clan Wolf embarrassing them in front of the other clans more so than an outright objection to his methods. Perez's call had made Smoke Jaguar look bad, and Osis took it as an opportunity to advance his own career. Given that the next paragraph describes further brutality from the clan after Perez's fall from grace, I think it's safe to assume that it wasn't morality that got him canned. Honestly, the entire thing smacks of Piranha's desire to keep the player from looking like the bad guy. After all, your entire star is horrified by the events, and for a dozen missions afterward, they won't shut the fuck up about it, as if being at Edo at all is some kind of albatross around their necks. From the way they keep guilt-tripping themselves, you'd think they were the ones pulling the trigger, and once again, just makes them feel less like Smoke Jaguar. With how much they whine and moan about civilians and contemplate the rights and wrongs of their actions, they would be more convincing as Clan Wolf or even Ghost Bear. Piranha, for the love of Kerensky, if you wanted to have these kinds of characters, then you should have chosen a different clan. But, fortunately, it's not all bad. Yes, the characters are bland and uninteresting, yes, they don't act like Smoke Jaguars for most of the game, and yes, the limp-wristed attempts at emotional beats are flatter than Sigourney Weaver's ass, but there are some good things here. Some damn good things, in fact. One of the biggest is the presentation. The cutscenes, despite having facial expressions that could give Mass Effect Andromeda a run for its money, are well shot, a massive step up for Mercenaries. The space sequences in particular are stunning, and I'm not just saying that because they show Tira Miraborg's kamikaze run at Rodstadt, though that certainly doesn't hurt. For all the bitching I just did about Edo, the scene itself is fittingly brutal, and put me in mind of the excellent Order 66 sequence from Revenge of the Sith. The score, the shots, and even the voice acting all came together here and gave me a solid hit of dopamine. And then there's the story's single biggest redeeming quality, that being the branching end paths. Yep, you heard me right. This game offers two possible endings based on a choice you make toward the end of the campaign. I'm going to give you one final spoiler warning before I continue, but just know that what lies beyond damn near saved the entire campaign for me. So in one of the final missions, you are presented with a choice. Ezra, still racked with guilt from Edo, betrays the Smoke Jaguars and runs away to join the Wolf's Dragoons. You have the choice of joining him or staying with the Jaguars. I chose the latter, and I am so damn glad that I did. For the first time, the game finally delivers that Smoke Jaguar experience. At this point, the characters are done fucking around and fully commit to the bit, allowing you to go all out. The dialogue improves dramatically as characters become the sneering spacists we all know and love to hate. Mia actually becomes somewhat interesting for half a minute. Former bondsman Yuichi provides some enjoyable commentary on the Combine, and your replacement for Ezra, a MechWarrior named Alexander, has a brief but suitably epic and clan-like exchange with Jaden before the final mission. And while we're at it, let's talk about that last mission. Holy shit, now that's what I'm talking about. Marching my way through the Curitan Royal Gardens on Luthien, slaying Wolf's Dragoons by the score, always satisfying, and finally battling Ezra in an epic showdown while we scream at each other about our conflicting ideals is peak Battletech. Sure, I won the fight so quickly that it cut off the dialogue mid-sentence.
We'll see. Did you know I only managed to contact the droids thanks to Liam? He reached out to them shortly before he died. Even he saw the...
But I would be lying if I said that I didn't watch those end credits roll with a smile on my face. I think Piranha wanted me to think that I got the bad ending, but I couldn't have been more satisfied. The story was rough, often dull, often contrary to the lore, but I really enjoyed where it ended up. So hats off to Piranha. You may have fucked up some of the high bar routine, but you damn sure stuck the landing. I know what you're thinking. Story schmory, is the gameplay any good? And to that I say, did you like Mercenaries? If so, then you'll probably be on board for this. I've gone through all the stages of grief and have settled on the cold acceptance that my desire for the true MechWarrior game like the days of old is a lost cause. Hopefully the indie scene can deliver us that classic mech sim action that I've been missing. MechWarrior 5 Clans is even snappier and more responsive than Mercenaries was, and truly feels more like playing Quake 3 underwater than controlling a giant murder machine. I have never felt less like I'm in a giant robot than I felt here. The sense of weight is completely off, as is the sense of scale, but these are all things that were problems in the previous game. If they didn't bother you there, then they won't bother you here. If you were hoping for something different, well, then the MechWarrior 5 part of the title should probably have been your first clue. I won't linger on this topic, it plays exactly like the last game did, take it or leave it. So now we come to the biggest change from Mercenaries to Clans. Mercenaries was largely built around its career mode, a series of infinite, procedurally generated missions that brought rewards for your mercenary company. It was a go-anywhere, shoot-anything kind of game. For many, myself included, it was the single biggest draw of the game. The story missions in the DLC I had always considered to be the weakest parts of the game, and so I largely ignored them. Clans has no career mode, just a story campaign, so when I heard that Piranha was building a whole game around the part of Mercenaries that I didn't like, I was pretty skeptical. Having played through this campaign, I have to say that it's exactly what I expected. Some of these missions are pretty good. There's even a few that are an outright blast to play, but I'm sad to say that I found these to be the exception, not the rule. For the most part, I would describe the game's levels in the same way Mrs. Mage describes my bedroom performance, taking way too long to finish. Piranha's idea of making a mission challenging is twofold: throwing absurd amounts of attrition at the player and loading up enemies with way too much HP. An approach that makes a game difficult much in the same way that cleaning up meth needles around a public walking trail is difficult. It's not hard in and of itself, there's just a lot of them and you need to go slow to avoid hurting yourself. The levels in this game are monstrous slugfests, where you and your star will be forced to contend with the entirety of the Inner Sphere's manpower at once. By the time I was done with the first planet, I put more battle mechs into the dirt than a Steiner general on a Monday afternoon, and I was up against pirates. By the time I was at the end of the game, I believe I had personally divested the Wolf's Dragoons of essentially all of its assault mechs. One mission in particular was so badly balanced that it took me an entire extra day of repeated attempts to complete, and I only succeeded at the end due to dumb luck. I did the math for this particular level. By the time that cutscene plays, you fight 54 battle mechs and 2 lances of armored vehicles. That is a battalion and a half, plus a boss fight against a Union-class dropship while under fire from multiple lances of mechs. At this point in the game, you've barely unlocked heavy mechs, and there are multiple assault mechs among the enemies. This mission was so bad that I brought Locust Labs in to help me, and even together, we couldn't beat it. I know IGN didn't finish the game before they wrote their review because there ain't no way the guy who couldn't complete the Cuphead tutorial got past this shit. Some of these missions have boss fights and they're just embarrassing, really. There's a VTOL with way too much HP, which you will fight several times over. There's also a dropship with way too much HP that flies in circles while you shoot the turrets off. And they respawn 3 times. Oh, and for one final cherry on top, none of the game's missions have checkpoints, and some of them can be upwards of an hour long. Enjoy replaying it if you screw up, fucko. After Edo, I min-maxed the shit out of my mechs, and by the end of the game, I was steamrolling the final missions, but damn did I have to build some stupid machines to make it through. By the final mission, I was rocking a full star of direwolves, each one loaded with 6, yes 6, chain-fired ERPPCs and an SRM-6 for good measure. Just like in Mercenaries, you got to bring the heaviest, stupidest builds you can conjure up, or else you're going to have a miserable time. That wouldn't be so much of a problem if not for 2 different factors. 1, the new mech lab is much worse than the old one, and 2, the return of everyone's favorite feature, the tonnage limit.
No, God! No, God, please, no! 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 No!
Seriously, Piranha, what is it with you and this arbitrary garbage? It makes some sense in a game like MechWarrior Online where I'm matching with other players, but I'm fighting entire armies of AI out here. It's a missed opportunity, too. Imagine having some kind of bidding mechanic where your end of mission rewards change based on how much tonnage you bring to a fight. That could have been interesting and in character for the clans, but nope. We've got the same stupid system that Mercenaries had. You've already locked the better mechs behind higher levels. If I've got the Kerenskys, which I was fucking drowning in by the end of the game, by the way, why not let me buy more mechs and use them? And look, most of the missions are balanced well enough that it isn't a massive deal, but it's not consistent. Frankly, I don't trust Piranha's balancing enough to rely on their idea of what I should be allowed to bring. Now let's move on to the mech bay. I think this is, without exaggeration, the most needlessly clunky series of menus I've ever perused, and I've played Hunt Showdown after the update. Options that were once front and center are now buried under 2 to 3 layers of pop-up windows and menus. Hardpoints aren't your only limiting factor anymore either. Now you have hardpoints and hardpoint sizes to deal with. Armor now takes up crit slots. Some heat sinks and armor pieces can't be removed at all. It leaves so little room for creativity and experimentation, which has always been one of the biggest redeeming factors of their previous games. The game also has a tiny selection of mechs to choose from, and since you abandon lighter mechs the moment something heavier is available, the number of viable options is even smaller. Trying to get the most out of your mech builds is akin to trying to browse YouTube while a passive-aggressive algorithm hides your subscriptions from you, and that's before you get to the skill trees. I don't understand why these are here. Nothing makes me want to jump out a window quite like seeing a long list of minuscule stat increases that I'm expected to micromanage. Spending some arbitrary currency to give me a plus 5% bonus to eating a quesadilla on a Thursday afternoon is not my idea of engaging gameplay, but I'm sure the Japanese audience will eat it right up. Clans has 3 separate skill trees for you to manage. There's one for each individual mech, one for each individual MechWarrior, and another one for general bonuses across your entire star. The most important of these is the Science Lab, which can affect things like the amount of damage you take, how much heat your weapons generate, and other such things. The pilot skills are mostly arbitrary, save for the evasion stat, which drastically decreases your chance of getting hit in the first place. Also, there's a melee stat here for some reason, which is hilarious to me. Clanners hate melee and all their weapons are built around maximum range. Why is this here? Fortunately, the individual mech XP can be safely ignored. I know because that's exactly what I did, and I made it to the end just fine. Use that XP to buy Omnipods instead and thank me later. And now for my final point addressing the gameplay, the oft-touted TAC map feature. Piranha was really proud of this one, and a lot of people were excited for it. My verdict?
I don't like it very much.
I know you're all shocked, but hear me out. The friendly AI in these games has been a consistent issue across MechWarrior 5. Mods that change AI behaviors are among the most popular. Having more individual control over them should be a godsend, especially given that the AI in these games somehow feels even worse. Granted, I played Mercenaries modded more often than not, but I don't remember allies walking into my line of fire nearly as often as they do here.
How it feels to
Play clans.
No, you don't, Megatron! Out of the way, Hot Rod!
stimulate your senses.
The battle doesn't stop when you open this menu, and your options within it are essentially to walk here and shoot that, both of which are accomplished more quickly and easily with the function key commands. Trust me, with how much shit is actively shooting at you in this game, you're going to want to be firing back at all times. You won't have time to fiddle with this thing. The only time I ever used it was when the AI got stuck on something, or if I wanted them to walk information ahead of me during a quiet moment. Honestly, it just feels like a weak attempt at a band-aid fix for broken AI. It's neat in concept, but the execution leaves a lot to be desired. I mean, come on, if I want my teammates to focus their fire on something, is it easier to fumble around with this overhead view, or just target the enemy and press F1 twice? You be the judge. So let's wrap all this ranting up and put a little bow on top. Despite my rather harsh thoughts, I didn't hate my time with MechWarrior 5 Clans. There's a lot of things the game does well. The presentation is mostly great, barring some weird faces and pretty bad voice acting. Despite being Unreal Engine 5, the game looks good and some of the levels are outright gorgeous, performance issues aside. The new music is good, and I believe better than the last game. The cutscenes are a huge improvement over Mercenaries. The story, though deeply flawed, comes together in the end for a suitably epic showdown. The gameplay, if it's your jam, is more of the same. If you like this style of MechWarrior, then you'll probably like this game. For me, though, that's where it ends. The game is held back by a myriad of strange and outright bad design choices. Many of the missions overstay their welcome. The boss fights are outright laughable and should have been left on the cutting room floor. The difficulty curve is all over the place. The mech lab sucks, the micromanaging is dull and just serves to waste your time more than anything else. There are issues from the previous game that haven't been addressed, and the new features are fairly lackluster. There's a decent amount going for this game, but also a lot holding it back. Is it worth $50? Well, without a New Game Plus mode, instant action, or anything beyond replaying story missions with your friends, I don't really see it. Your own mileage may vary. My playthrough clocked in at 25.7 hours, so it definitely wasn't lacking in content, but I don't feel much of a need to go back and replay it, not even for co-op. The story missions just don't lend themselves to that style of gameplay the way Mercenaries does with its procedural career mode. Sure, you get an extra player, but with less creativity in the mech bay, I don't see it holding their attention for very long. If you want this game for co-op only, stick with Mercenaries. For everyone else, it might be worth getting on a sale, definitely with Game Pass. My final rating for the game is going to be a 6.5 out of 10. If the UI was a bit tighter and the roster a little bigger, I might raise it up to a 7, but those would have to come as free updates, and knowing Piranha, that's likely going to come in the form of paid DLC. No thanks. At the end of the day, the game is kinda mid, but it's not outright bad. It's just frustrating to see the same things that held mercenaries back still clinging on to clans. Anyway, that's my 2 cents on the game. Thanks for sticking around until the end, and I hope you found my rambling helpful. Until next time, this is Mage Leader, signing off.